All right. Well, I can sense the reason behind some of your reservations concerning the chromatic fantasia. What I don't understand, though, is that why you would bracket, this very loosely a rhapsodic piece with a work like the Italian Concerto, which has that very rectangular kind of Rococo architecture.
Well, that's true. I think that both pieces, though, one could say, stand somewhat outside Bach's natural idiom, if one could call it that. I mean, neither are really contrapuntal, neither really get their ideas out of linear, stimuli, one kind or another. The Italian Concerto, as you say, is a well-designed, neatly blocked out bit of Georgian architecture of the kind that Handel certainly wrote all the time, in England particularly, and wrote, I think, rather more successfully, I must say. That's the kind of piece that Bach's sons would have probably liked the old man to have written all his life, but thank God he resisted the temptation most of the time anyway. And they would have liked him to do that, I suppose, because as it happens, the Italian Concerto is one of those very few pieces, really, where he quite clearly indicates certain parameters that normally he leaves up for grabs,
Dynamics
and tempo, but in this case dynamics, because he indicates very clearly tutti, solo, forte, piano, contrast. And then you come up against a real quandary in this piece, because when you play it on the piano natively can do things that the harpsichord cannot. It can make crescendos and it can make diminuendos, and the harpsichord, of course, cannot. It has to put out plateaus when you play it on harpsichord. So you have to then decide, okay, how much of the piano do we want in this? How much do we want to exploit and really use? And the question is not too much, because if you use too much, you then destroy the whole structure of the piece. I don't think, for example, it would be a good idea to minimize the tutti and the solo contrast by doing something like this. I think that would be really counterproductive with a contrast like that. But it's like the old string player's expression, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Bruno. Just because you paid for the whole bow, you don't have to use it. Just because you got a piano, you don't have to exploit its peculiar resources in that sense. On the other hand, when you come to the intensely emotional side of Bach, when you get to things like the Sarabande and the E minor partita, for example, which have an almost Wagnerian intensity, I think it's ridiculous to put straitjackets on the music,